Yeah, so tell me, coming into the chairmanship position, how you see the role of Fort Mill Economic Partners within the greater community. So you mentioned, growing and helping and supporting businesses and retail. Has that changed over time? Is that still the same role? And how do you go about doing that?
Sure. Well, some of the things that we've accomplished is the Bailey Bill was adopted by the town of Fort Mill, which is an excellent tool for somebody who wants to come in and develop an old building. We also helped with the facade grant improvements for downtown Fort Mill. And one of the things I'm real proud of, because it was one of the first things that I really helped with the partners, was helping with the Wayfinder study that was conducted on behalf of the town of Fort Mill to try to improve traffic flow and notification signs going from, all the way from the interstate down to the pedestrian level. And that plan has been adopted by the town of Fort Mill, and we're looking for those signs to start rolling out as soon as this year. So amazing accomplishment to try to help with some of the growth symptoms that are wonderful, but with that growth we have traffic, and Wayfinder system is a great tool to try to help manage that growth.
That's the Wayfinder system. I think is a great example of this because everyone knows about the people moving to Fort Mill, but they may not understand the extent to which people come and visit Fort Mill. Fort Mill has the two top tourist destinations in the county. Carowinds and now Kingsley is right behind it, which again impacts the traffic. How does the Wayfinder system actually help mitigate some of that, or what do you think the function of that is going to be?
Sure. So the biggest problem that a Wayfinder system tries to address is when you're trying to get the most efficient trip out of each driver, and the only way you can do that is to give them the knowledge that they need to know where they're going. The average trip in Charlotte was shortened by 15 minutes per trip when they put their Wayfinder system in. And you multiply that by as many cars are on the road, and you can see the benefit of something like that.
Yeah.
So the idea here is that we don't want people driving around for 15 minutes trying to figure out where to park. We don't want them to try to figure out a quicker way to get somewhere. We want it to be obvious, and we want them to go through the major corridors and not through local arterial roads where they're putting burdens on a community road. So those are all accomplished with a good and sound Wayfinder system.
So I don't know if you could tell, but when you mentioned that it saved the average trip 15 minutes, it kind of blew my mind because the cost to benefit ratio there is just through the roof. And I want to put that in context because, for instance, one of the projects in the near future in Fort Mill is the widening of 21, which is probably way past due. That project will cost tens of millions of dollars, and it will probably save less than a minute of average travel time. And you're talking about, a study and the placement of where to put them, and the cost to put in and install these signs is probably what? I mean, do you have an idea what the dollar figure is for the Wayfinder project?
And I'm going from memory here because we did have it in phases. I want to say the first phase was somewhere between the $50,000 and $100,000 range, and it's a pretty significant investment. And I think that they're going to do the most important ones first and get down to the pedestrian level on phase two. But that's where you're going to see the biggest bang for the buck.
But you're talking about spending less than $1 million to save an average of 15 minutes of travel time for people coming in the area, which means less cars on the road that residents are competing with if the travel times and the trips are shorter. So you're talking about a very low cost and just a huge benefit. And when you're talking in the context of infrastructure improvements, I don't know how you get a better cost benefit ratio than that. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I really want to compliment the town on having the vision of saying, this is an issue. We have some fantastic growth in the town limits, but we also have the symptoms of that wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And how do we mitigate it for our residents? And I really appreciate their partnership with us to move that forward. It's going to help a lot.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that growth before we get too much into anything else because we've mentioned it a couple times. We have this 2020 census results that we're expecting this year, which are, I know everyone is on pins and needles waiting to see what those numbers are. But anecdotally, how long Well, let's start here. How long have you been in Fort Mill?
10 years.
10 years.
Yep.
So you've seen a huge change just in the last 10 years.
Yep.
Especially with certain corridors like 160. I mean, 10 years ago, there was still goat farms on 160, which are now residents or neighborhoods with 800 homes or more, all of which are, putting all those cars and people, all that demand onto 160. And perhaps for anyone listening from outside the Fort Mill area or your kind that isn't aware, there aren't too many roads in Fort Mill. Like there's only a few ways to get places, right? And so you're kind of bottlenecked on those roads. And that traffic sort of becomes a pain for people when they're trying to get up and down or get somewhere. But you're kind of referencing or discussing it kind of in terms of being a blessing to have, because what that means is you have people that want to be and live in your area, right? That's a good thing. Am I correct? I don't want to.
One of the leading indicators of a successful, thriving community is a increase in traffic. It indicates that people want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
People are happy to live here. And what's happy to me is that we're seeing the traffic coming from both directions. It's not just a commute out of Fort Mill, going to work somewhere else. We actually have a business community that's thriving now, and that people are actually commuting into Fort Mill and using our resources here, mm-hmm. and eating at our restaurants and visiting our shops. And that helps us support our community.
Mm-hmm.